We've all tried one in our local coffee shop, but how on earth do we make one at home? Here's a little video on how to make a flat white. So I had my very first flat white at a coffee shop in Bath called Forum. I went in there one day with a few friends from work and I wasn't really sure what to expect, wasn't really sure even what to order. So I asked the barista what he thought would be a good idea. So he recommended a flat white. So what on earth is a flat white? Well, essentially it's a slightly stronger latte, made with a double shot and a bit less milk. Traditionally around a 6-ounce drink overall. If you like something short, punchy, but full of flavour and texture, the flat white is the drink for you. So, if you're at home and you don't have a coffee machine that's worth several £1000s, you don't have access to a load of incredible equipment to try and do this exact same drink as you would get in the coffee shop, how do you do it? Well, I'm going to be using my Sage Barista Express to make this flat white. Now remember, I'm not a barista. Everything that I want to do for this is going to be based on my experience of doing it at home. There might not be any latte art, but hopefully we're going to end up with a fantastic drink. So, for today's coffee beans as well, we want to make sure we're using something very fresh and super tasty for this drink. In which case, I'm going to be using the Las Margaritas by Crankhouse Coffee based in Exeter. Now this Colombian coffee actually caught me off guard immensely. The reason being, two things. First of all, I'm not normally a huge fan of Colombian coffee. However, a few times recently I've really had to eat my words on this. This is no exception. Now we'll talk about the beans a little bit first. Now, when you first open up the bag, two things strike you. First of all, it's the size of the bean, they're ginormous. When you actually pour some out in your hand, you can see just how big they are. Now they've got a lovely fragrant smell to them, they've got a fantastic finish, very matte, but they almost feel very hollow, which almost feels quite surreal. But at the same time, they're very enticing. Now in terms of the actual fragrances we get from the bag itself, you get hit, and I mean hit, straight in the face with this luscious, sweet, chocolatey, caramelly type of flavour, and it's absolutely amazing. I never really expect to get anything too much from the Colombian coffees I've tried a long time ago, but certainly in recent times, the coffees that have been produced in these regions are absolutely out of this world. Just so much chocolatey caramelness. I think you'd enjoy this if you like your sweeter coffees. If you have it as an espresso, expect those flavours to be very pungent and really come to the surface. But as we know, we're making a flat white. So how is this actually going to change things? Well, let's look through the process and we'll do this together as we go through making our flat white at home, with special thanks to the Las Margaritas by Crankhouse Coffee and the Sage Barista Express. So there's a few apparatus that we're actually going to need in order to make this drink. First of all, I've got my Sage Barista Express. The reason I use this, personally I love it, my wife bought it for me, it's an incredible machine. It has incredible espresso pressure and it has a great steam wand as well. Second of all, I want to make sure that I have a thermometer. Now the thermometer is really important because we do need to actually ensure that we're getting this to the right temperature. We're going to aim for around 140 or 145 degrees today. Next up we have our pitcher. Now this pitcher has been kept in the fridge to keep it very chilled. Now the idea is the colder the milk is, the bit more room for movement and manoeuvrability you've got with your milk. We then have those incredible coffee beans by Crankhouse Coffee. Now I think you are going to really enjoy these. They're certainly in demand at the moment. You need to grab a bag now. Click on the link below and grab a bag from coffeewithgpa.com and ensure you get some before the season's out of these. Next up we have our scales. Now I'm going to be weighing out 18 grams of coffee for this particular drink today. So the first thing that I'm going to need to do is purge my steam wand. The reason being a lot of condensation builds up within that steam wand and we want to make sure that it gets rid of all of those because we don't really want that in our drink. So I do a single turn to the left. Perfect. Now for the milk. So in my pitcher I'm going to want to go up to just below where the spout begins, just so I know that I've got the right amount of milk. It's not something that you really want a huge amount for, otherwise you're really getting yourself, well, a slightly stronger latte. The milk has also been chilled, so between the pouring jug and the milk, we've got something that is going to be at absolute best, super chilled, ready to go. We want to heat up our milk. Now remember, we want to get to that temperature of around 140, 145 degrees Fahrenheit. So I'm going to start by putting the wand into the milk. Now what I want to do here is just to get the wand just inside the milk, just so that it allows a lot of the air bubbles to quickly get into that and produce some aerated milk. I want to listen out for a bit of a crackle on the first instance as well. And now we drop the wand in, keep it at an angle as well to ensure that the milk is going to go around like a turbine on the inside. We've still got a nice textured, creamy, velvety milk. Now if you've got too many air bubbles on top, you can just bash it on the countertop a couple of times and that should just get rid of any of those excess bubbles. We can give it a little swirl now so it just mixes a little bit easier together. Okay, so time for the espresso. Now we've used the 18 grams of the espresso at the moment. Now this is the Crankhouse coffee beans. These are going into a double basket in our porter filter and we'll give those a grind. So we're giving it a little tamp. We want to make sure we don't use too much pressure at this stage because ultimately we want to get a good extraction and we don't want to hinder that in any way. Locked and loaded, ready to pour our espresso shot. And there we have our espresso shot. So, what sort of taste do we actually expect before we put our milk in? Well, first of all, you can tell it's Colombian coffee. The aromas just rise to the surface and jump out at you. It's really, really lovely. So good. When you use a good coffee bean, especially a fresh one, the taste is just so different. You'll know this now. The more you look into your specialty coffee, you are going to have a way better experience than perhaps some of the beans that you get from your local supermarket. It's well worth the investment. So we're going to give it a little swirl so the crema actually melts a bit more or mixes into the espresso itself. And now we pour our milk. So with our milk, what we want to do is tilt our glass or our cup ever so slightly to the side, and we want to do a slightly higher pour into the centre. As the milk pours out, we want to get a little bit closer and then raise our glass so that it's level. That's how you make a flat white in the comfort of your own home.